Hi.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing good.
Yay. I've only done one of these lives like once in my life. So thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, we're really excited. This is only my third time, so I'm new to it too.
Awesome. Awesome. Perfect.
How have you been?
I have been, it's been crazy. No one predicted a global pandemic during all of
No.
this. And I'm actually moving to a different city starting tomorrow. So I'm in the process of packing and getting a car for the first time in 10 years. And so it's crazy.
That is a little crazy. Where do you live at the moment then?
So I have been quarantined, whatever, with my family in Orange County, New York. And I just recently got a full-time job up in Syracuse, New York. So
Oh, awesome.
making the move. Yeah, so
That's
it's only like 3.5 hours, so it's not too bad.
yeah, definitely need a car around there though, I would imagine.
For sure. I was living in New York City for like 8 years and then on tour for two, so I never needed a car. And now I'm like, oh, a car insurance, all of that. So it's been
Yeah,
fun.
that's awesome. So what did you do, I guess, when you were in New York City and then you said you were on tour? Like what kind of jobs were you doing?
So I graduated, like most of you know, in 2010 from Goucher, and I moved to the city basically right after I graduated. So I was, living the artist dream in New York City. I was dancing with a small dance company, and then I was waitressing and hostessing, like every job, like most artists know, you take a million jobs to be able to like live that dream. And then I had auditioned for a few dance companies, and I actually got my first touring job. And then I also was teaching a lot of fitness at that time. So I was doing mostly more fitness, and then I got my touring job. And long story short, I was on tour for a year in Germany. And then I went back to New York City for 2 years to teach a ton of fitness. I was teaching dance cardio. I was teaching a mind body boot camp class. And then I decided after 2 years of being back in New York City, I was like, I want to go back on tour. So I've been traveling the world with Catapult Entertainment for the past 2 years. And then obviously the pandemic hit. So yeah.
Definitely interrupted some plans, I am sure.
Oh, for sure.
But I can't believe Germany. That sounds amazing. I would have loved to spend a year there. Where else did you said you did the world with like Catapult Entertainment. What other places did you get the chance to perform in?
So my first ever, we did a short weekend, which is crazy to say. I went for a weekend. I went to Lithuania, and then I was in Germany for a while, and then we did France, and then we had like one day off a week, so I would just like hop on a train or get in a car and go wherever I wanted. And then the last year, 2 years ago, I went to Kuwait with them on a gig. And then I did Israel. I've done Salzburg, like Austria area. We did, oh my gosh, so many places. I can't even remember at this point.
That
But
sounds
a lot of
amazing.
all of Europe.
That sounds absolutely incredible. Did you
Yes,
want to get into dance so that you could try? Like, was that sort of your plan when you thought you were going to dance for them? Like, oh, I really want to see the world. That's why I want to do this. Or did it just come as like a really awesome second to that?
um, well, when I had first moved to New York, my dream was to, stay in New York and be with a company in New York. And then I had a friend who actually was dancing for the company, and they were on America's Got Talent in 2013, and I had no idea. I don't watch shows like that, unfortunately. And my friend was like, "Yeah, I dance for this company," and he was taking a cruise ship job, and he's like, "I know that they're looking for girls to join the company." So I auditioned, and then they were like, "Yeah, so if you want to do this, like, you have to pack your bags. Like, we're going to be gone for like 5 months at a time, and then you come back and then come home." And I was like, wow, like, I never thought I would ever want to be in Germany. And I took my first trip, and I was like, this is amazing. Um, so it's definitely an experience to be able to travel the world and get paid to be able to do that and perform. There's definitely things that people don't see, and they hear my life and they're like, "Oh, you have like such a crazy life," and I'm like, but it is a lot of traveling, which sometimes can be difficult. But it was an amazing experience.
Yeah, traveling can definitely be exhausting, and I can't imagine on top of the dancing as well how worn out you must have been, but also how lucky you were to have those kinds of experiences. Did you
For
get the
sure.
chance to study abroad when you were at Goucher as well? Did that kind of also play into this?
Yes, so I was a double major with a concentration. So for anybody who's at Goucher and is doing that life, your schedule is packed. So I'm pretty sure when I went in my freshman year, we had like a schedule that was like, you have to do this, 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 like planned out my 4 years. So I went to Rio de Janeiro for like a post semester, the 3-week intensive. I was there my sophomore year after, like from like May to whatever, June, however long we went. And I loved it.
That sounds really cool. I'm also a double major with a concentration, so I understand like the packed situation. And I got really lucky to be able to go abroad like I did. But
amazing. Where did you go?
I was at Oxford before the pandemic, sort of.
Oh wow.
Crushed
oh
that.
wow.
But yeah, so
I'm
I
so
just
sorry.
got in there, which was exciting, amazing. Traveling, as you know, is just incredible, and Europe is lovely.
Oh yeah.
But so I guess now you're kind of in this middle state. Like, what job are you moving on to now? Are you going back to like performing, or are you taking something a little different?
So when I took the tour at the beginning of this year, I'm going to be, I shouldn't say this on Instagram Live, but I am going to be 33 in December. So, at that age, your priorities start to change. And I was wanting like a little more stability. And when you're traveling that much, you don't get to see your friends and family. There would be times that I would come home and I'd have 4 days to repack my bag and then get back on a plane. So I started to realize that I wanted a home base again, and I knew I didn't want to move back to New York because it was a beautiful experience that I appreciate and I'm grateful for, but I want something a little more affordable. And so I had been thinking about retiring from my career at the beginning of this tour, and then the pandemic happened, and for myself, it's not how I saw my career ending, but I think our lives always lead us into a path that sometimes we just didn't see coming. And I originally wanted to be managing like a fitness studio and teaching and all that stuff. But another side note with the pandemic, it's a tough place to go into fitness at this point. And so an amazing opportunity came up for me to be managing a performing arts school. And it was in the realm of, managing. And I think I obviously have a ton of experience in the arts world. So it came in, and it was like out of nowhere that I got this opportunity. And, it just worked out. And I think now looking at it, and like I said before in one of your questions, that sometimes our life doesn't always look the way that like we think it's going to look, or whatever expectations we put on ourselves. So I expected myself to end my career this like beautiful, amazing way with my last bow, and then like go be managing a fitness studio. But the pandemic definitely shifted that, and now I'm on this path to be managing a performing arts school, and I'm super grateful, and I'm really excited, and I think it's going to be an amazing experience. So
yeah, it sounds like an incredible opportunity. I'm really glad the pandemic has kind of not completely stumped you and like left you without the ability to move on and start a new career and do that. And I'm glad you've been like so flexible and able to sort of adapt to it. You mentioned in one of our previous emails that you majored in dance and dance therapy, and I can't recall what your concentration was. But how do you use that like day to day when you're performing, or how are you intending to use that as managing this performing arts center?
So I think with the dance therapy, so I was a dance performance and psychology major, and then I used the dance therapy to kind of bring them together. I think when I was back at Goucher, I wanted to have options. I think as an artist, injuries can happen and things can happen that will, sideline your career. So for me to be able to have that extra, buffer for myself. But I think it has helped me, especially when I'm teaching. I just got my yoga certification recently, and I think I obviously will be teaching fitness on the side, as of now, virtually, to keep everyone safe. And I think using just like all of those techniques and in a fitness class, and I think with where we're at in the world and all of the chaos that is happening, I think it's just using tools from that coursework is really important. And I think, everyone is trying to do their part right now. And doing the inner work for yourself during this time is super important to, keep us sane, and, keep us open.
Yeah, I definitely 100% agree on that.
Yes.
For sure. I also wanted to ask you sort of how being a Goucher and being in those courses led you to do this sort of career path that you went from like performing in New York to performing internationally, and now the job you're in today. Sort of like, how did anyone specifically influence you and make you know that like, I really want to go to New York, that's exactly what I wanted to do? Or maybe like you did some sort of internship, or I'm not exactly sure if those differ for dance majors, but like what you did that sort of led you into this path, and maybe you came into Goucher and just knew this was what you were thinking.
So, funny story. When I was 6 years old, I only lived like an hour and a half from New York City. So I would go there a lot when I was a kid, and I loved the New York City skyline. Like, I knew I wanted to move to New York. And I think as a dancer, there's a chunk and a handful of dancers that have this vision in their head that like, I'm going to graduate, or I'm just going to move right to New York. Like we have this I don't want to say expectation, but this vision to move to New York. And for any dance major watching this, or will end up watching this later, my biggest thing was the connections that you make at Goucher. And Goucher does this wonderful thing where they bring in artists and they do residencies. And I was a sophomore, and there was a male artist that came in. His name is Roger Jeffrey, and he did a residency, and I actually wasn't in his piece. I don't even know if I auditioned, but I took his classes because I was taking like higher end classes as a sophomore, and he remembered me, and he was like always picking on me, super hard on me. But I graduated, and no joke, 2 weeks later, I got an email from him being like, hey, I remember you, and I'm pretty sure you just graduated. I have a show that I'm doing at Jacob's Pillow in Massachusetts, but we're going to rehearse in New York City and then perform there. Would you want to be casted in it? And that's how I got my first professional job, is because of a connection at Goucher, and I wasn't even in a piece. So I think that's super important for dancers, especially at Goucher, to like make those connections. Like, even if you don't end up auditioning, get into those classes, make those connections. And there's a lot of great people in the Goucher dance department, so they're always, happy to help you. And I also think the connections, like I still talk to so many alum, and I was just working with Asia's Latina, and we were doing some stuff on her, and even this many years later. So connections are like the number one for me.
That's awesome.
And what helped me.
Did you stay in touch with him after he left, or did he just kind of reach out to you out of the blue?
To be honest, I feel like he kind of just reached out to me out of the blue. I'm pretty sure we probably connected on social media, but yeah, I think he just kind of just remembered me. I feel like I don't remember how exactly it went down, but I just remember getting an email. So we probably, just remembered each other. He probably remembered me on social media or whatever, but yeah, it just making that connection. And he's still a huge part of my life, and I love him dearly. And if he ever watches this, I thank him so much. And I also thank Goucher, because without them bringing him in, I probably wouldn't be where I am today. So
I'm glad that connection has worked out so well for you. That seems really awesome that things just kind of happened like that. We had a student write in, and she wanted to know if the transition out of college was hard. And I know your experience was not, I guess, the same as most. And that you did get that connection that really led you to a job pretty quickly out of college. But was it hard for you to transition from there, and also sort of your transitions into your jobs overseas?
I'm funny like this. I have a hard time with anything ending, and I think at that age, like I said, I'm trying, now that I'm 32, I'm trying to lead a life without expectations, because I think that just like leads you to sometimes disappointment. because we don't take into different factors. So when I was that age and I just got out of college, like I expected that I was going to get out and I was going to get a job right away, which luckily I did, but it was a short-lived job. It was only like a gig for 2 months, and in a way, I expected myself to just jump into these auditions and get booked right away, which, you can't, I guess, like, you can't expect that, but I did, and it was definitely a shock to the system. You were going into auditions where you could have been number 450, like, girls were auditioning, and they might not even have been, accepting somebody at that time. So it definitely was a hard transition, but I think it made me be the person I am today. It taught me so much. And, there are a ton of dancers that go in with these expectations, and then they hear no after no after no, and then they just stop because they don't want to do that. But I think all of those no's strengthened me and made me a stronger person, and I just kept fighting until I got that one yes. And it really does only take that one yes. And so that getting up to that point, definitely it was an experience, and it definitely was hard. But I think if you keep a mindset that, okay, maybe I need to drop my expectations, and that doesn't mean that you can't have standards, because I think, you keep your standards, but what you see is maybe not how it's going to go, but wherever it leads you will be this beautiful experience. So hopefully that helps.
Yeah, you said that very well. I was actually going to ask what you'd recommend for dancers in that position, but it seems like you've already kind of covered that. Like, definitely keep pushing, keep trying, don't give up. Like, something might come through, that sort of situation. And it seems like definitely your ability to resist that and continue through that has led you into some of the places you have been
for
to
sure.
be here now, which is good. I mean, I'm getting to talk to you, which is exciting. And also that you've done so well for yourself so far. When you were saying that sometimes you only had like a weekend or a short weekend in some of these countries, what did your day-to-day look like when you were working in some of these performances? It probably wasn't very standard. But like, what would your average, if you had to say, day look like?
So it's a little, I mean, it differs between countries and where we are. Typically, the company first started out as only we traveled abroad. And then we kind of started doing American tours. So when we're in America, we live on a tour bus. So there's 10 to 12 beds on the bus that we sleep on. If we have overnights, most of the time we have hotels. When we were in Europe this past January, we were in Germany for a month. We only lived on a tour bus. We had a hotel maybe once a week. So a day in a life is you wake up in the morning, and typically if we did an overnight, you're already at the theater. Like, you wake up on the bus at the theater already. Or if you slept in a hotel, you might have to get up pretty early and get on the bus, and we would drive to a theater, and then you would wake up if you took a nap or whatever, and we had to be on stage, and we would warm up together. We would rehearse. So if anything crazy happened in the show the night before, we would go over that. So usually a 2.5 hour rehearsal. And then we had a stop time, an hour and a half before the show. So we did hair and makeup, warm up, whatever you need to do. I'm a huge meditator, so I have to meditate before every single show to get my body and mind together. And then we would have a show. Typically the show ran an hour and a half. And then you would shower, and sometimes you would get back on the bus and drive overnight. Or sometimes if you got lucky, we would have an amazing hotel, and every theater's different. They would provide food for us. And so it definitely was an experience. And then there's some times where, I've done shows where I've literally gotten on a plane. I flew to Europe, and when I got there, when I landed, I was checking into my flight to go home. So there was times that I would, one time I took a 38-hour flight with delays and stuff. I was in Europe for 22 hours, and then I got back on a flight. So there was times, there was times that I was like, oh boy. So
I could certainly not see myself doing something like that, but more power to you. That sounds amazing. The experience you had because of it sounded incredible.
Yes, for sure.
That's really awesome.
Thank you.
There's something else I was gonna ask sort of what like type of, I'm not a dance major, so I don't really know the different types of dance, but I know some of the people watching this or some of the people that might watch it in the future, like what kind of dance do you do? Did it depend on where you were performing, or was it pretty standard? Is there something you specialized in?
So I grew up being a little ballerina. Like I had this dream that I was going to be an ABT, but I range on the shorter side. So I started to, go into different forms, and I really started to love modern dance. And I'm a very athletic person, so I loved, more athletic movement. And then I just started to realize I was like, huh, I think I like I think I like modern dance more than ballet, and that's nothing against ballet. I think you definitely have to work that, and that's like your foundation for everything. So my dance company, if you haven't heard of them, they're a shadow company. So we're actually behind a screen and you would only see our shadows. So it's like dancing, acting, acrobatics, everything. But when I was in New York, I was primarily with modern companies, contemporary modern companies. So more so on the modern contemporary side, but I definitely grew up being hardcore, the rock school of ballet, tights, leotard, point shoes, tutus. That was my life when I was a kid, but not anymore.
That definitely sounds like a transition to make, and this whole shadow dancing thing sounds really interesting. So you perform sort of faceless. It was just kind of the movements behind the screen. Is
Yes.
that how that worked?
hmm Yeah, so yeah, we only actually went in front of the screen when we came out in the beginning. There was one piece where we were in front of the screen, but we couldn't really see the audience because there's a projection that's happening coming at us, and plus the audience is very dark, so you couldn't really see them. And then at the end, we would come out. But yeah, you didn't see the audience during the show, which is definitely an interesting experience because you have to be able to portray the character that you are without having this like visual of the audience. So it was definitely a challenge. And shadow dance isn't for everyone. You have to like always be on the mark. If you're not on your mark, it may not look like what you're trying to do. So it was an experience, and I loved it. Like I said, I'm so grateful for that experience. And I'm open to ever doing gigs if there was one in the future that I could do. But yeah, it was very cool.
That's very cool. That's really cool. Is there
Yes.
anything that you'd recommend that dance majors do at this point? So you did say like make connections with some of those
hmm
residents that are staying and teaching and things like that, but especially during the times of COVID, like what could you
For
recommend for
sure.
Goucher's dancers so that they're staying on top of this and networking like they should be and like getting themselves ready for some of these positions or auditions, like things like that?
For sure. I think, like I said, connections, and that doesn't necessarily have to be with residents that come in. I actually just was talking and working with a 2020 graduate dancer from Goucher, and we were mentoring. I would say I was mentoring her to give her advice on, the next steps. And I think that graduating and leaving your comfort zone in that level is already super anxiety ridden, and it's hard. It's a hard transition for anybody. And now doing it with a pandemic, I think my heart goes out to any graduating senior and that just graduated. And so I think it's about just also making the connections with alum. And I think Goucher has such a tight knit community, and I think we all are very supportive. So if a Goucher grad or even an undergrad reached out to me and was like, "Hey, I need advice," like am open to give that or help them as best as I can, because I think the more the merrier, the more help you can get, the better. So I think that, and then also just like staying active. I think the hard thing about the pandemic is this balance between not doing anything and, listen, I love to lay on the couch and watch Netflix, but also not overdoing it. So finding that balance and working on your craft, taking classes virtually if you can't get to a studio, or, taking fitness classes to keep yourself healthy, reading books, like educating yourself on where you want to go, what your craft is, stuff like that. Just talking, doing, listening to Instagram lives like this. I think there's so much information that we can take in, but it's up to us to go about doing that, if that makes sense.
That definitely makes sense. And I feel like there's a lot of really good tips for students, and I'll definitely make sure to post those and make sure students are aware of them. And I
Perfect.
definitely love to get you in touch with more students if they do reach out to
For
us.
sure.
So I wanted to make sure that's okay with you if we do give them your
Oh, for sure.
information to
For sure.
contact. And are you part of our career communities?
I think so. Yes, I think so.
Okay, because we also have like a LinkedIn group, and we do post some tips for those like recent grads or
Hmm.
even alumni, and that's also we also suggest people go there, look for
Amazing.
those connections. So we definitely want to connect
Perfect.
you and other students,
Hmm.
different alums, because
Hmm.
that's a big part of what we do in my office. So yeah, if
Perfect.
there's anything else, we have a couple minutes left. If you wanted to share something else for students, or like things maybe you could recommend again, or just anything else you can think of that really helped you while you were at Goucher, maybe different services you used while you were here. Um,
Yeah, I mean, I think just like everyone, whether you just graduated or you're still at Goucher right now, and I know Goucher is virtual, I think it's just staying committed to like what you want. And I think sometimes the biggest thing, and I think the biggest thing about this global pandemic right now is that I think before the pandemic there was a lot of us who were maybe living a life that we were getting comfortable with and becoming a little complacent in a way. Like we weren't pushing ourselves. So I think just like making sure at the moment that your life is super aligned with like what you want. Like everything that you're doing should be aligned to like get you to this like point that you or goal that you made for yourself. And I think I was living a life that wasn't aligned. And I think once I started to realize that and look at, okay, is this working for me? This isn't working for me. It really helped me to take myself to that next level. So I think, yeah, just going back to aligning yourself with like what you want, resetting those goals, because you know your goals change over time. And then just using those resources, because my heart really goes out to all of you, and just, even undergrads right now during this time. Like, I can't imagine, especially when you were a double major, like I was thinking about that the other day, like how do you keep going on? And I think we all just have to just keep plugging along. Like at one point this will be over, so definitely that helps. And just looking at your life and seeing where you can educate yourself more, but also trying different things. I just launched a new Instagram handle for like my fitness and started a blog. So stuff like that, keeping yourself busy, trying
That's
new things.
awesome. I'm glad
Yeah.
you've like really taken this time stuck in quarantine to do some of those things. Like, how is that going for you? Because blogging and having an Instagram to me is very different than performing on the stage. I mean, there's still a little bit of a performance aspect of that you really have to like put
Hmm.
your best foot forward. But how has that been different and a little bit challenging? Because that wasn't necessarily something you focused on.
For sure. I think when I started with fitness a few years ago, inspiring people and helping people, there's a lot of people, I keep saying people, but there's a lot of, everyone's out there trying to do their best. And I think we all need a helping hand at times. And I just want to be that light and help as many people as I can. So when I started teaching fitness, that was such a great outlet for me. And so then I started this whole, Instagram handle and blog that's, slowly coming off the ground. We all have our starting points. And I got my yoga certification. So it's been something that I've wanted to do, but like I said, when you're traveling the world, you don't have, I barely had 5 minutes to myself sometimes. So being able to do a yoga cert wasn't necessarily in the cards. So I think the pandemic definitely brought some good things to me. Like it gave me the time to finally slow down, which I think we're as, especially like our generation, we're like on the go all the time. So for us to slow down and stop it was like a jolt. Like it was a lot. But then once I got into my group, I was like, okay, now I have the time to, do the inner work and do the things that I've wanted to. So it's been great.
That sounds really good. I'm glad you had that, and I'd have to agree. Yeah, our generation definitely is just pushing and going and going.
Hmm.
And COVID has allowed us to take a step back and go, okay, what am I doing?
For sure.
Why am I doing it? And why am I in such
Yeah.
a rush all the time? Which
But I also think that people with that, I think that's such a great point, is that people, and I was at this point at one point, where I was like, what am I doing with my life? And then it became like I was like panicked, and then I gave myself anxiety over it. But it also you can look at it in a different way. There's always a different way to look at things. So you can choose to be happy, you can choose to be empowered, or you can let your anxiety take over. So I think that's also finding that balance during this time is definitely a struggle and a challenge.
Yeah, I would 100% agree, and I think you've said it super well. And again, I wanted to thank you a lot for joining us and talking about that. We don't get a lot of dance majors to usually share, especially because we usually host these events, and many have gone on to much further away places. And even 2 years ago, this isn't something we've been able to connect with you with. So I'm really glad we got to have you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. If you are a Goucher and you're taking a Goucher dancer and you're taking senior capstone this year, I'm actually going to be doing a Zoom with the senior capstone class with Amanda Tom-Woodson. I'm one of the alumni interviewees for their class. So if you're in a Gouch dancer major and taking capstone this year, I will see you at your class one of these days. I think it's like in 2 weeks.
I will definitely make sure that I push that to our students and make sure they know that's there, so that we can highlight that and make sure they know to connect with you that
way.
Yes. Awesome. Have a great one. Thank you so much again for joining us. We really appreciated it.
Thank you so much. You have a great day, all right?
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.